points on the LA Clippers as we get set for an unprecedented season for the franchise in the sense that they're among the favorites to win it all in June. Greg Anthony right there, Brian Shaw, I'm Matt Weiner. Good to have you with us. The Clippers pulled off a major coup in not only signing Kawhi Leonard, but meeting his demand for a superstar partner in Paul George. They now have two of the best two-way wings in recent history. We'll have to wait a bit to see them together. Paul George coming off a couple of surgeries. He'll be a limited participant in training camp. We'll hear from him on his health in just a moment. But when they're together and healthy, how good a team should we expect this to be?
I think the expectations are warranted. This is a team that could probably contend for a world championship. Think of it defensively. We talked about George and obviously Kawhi, but you throw Patrick Beverley in there, and those arguably are the three best defenders at their position in the entire league. And so they're going to be able to get it done there. And now look at how good offensively Paul and Kawhi can be, and especially the confidence that Kawhi Leonard is going to bring to the table after what he just pulled off this past season, and the confidence that everybody that's going to play with him this season, they're going to garner. Because when you play with one of the all-time best, it allows you to feel better about your game. And so then you throw in Doc Rivers, who's won a world championship as a head coach. The sky's the limit for this Clippers team, and I'm excited to see those two. It's going to be a while before they get out there together, but I'm really looking forward to the dynamic in Clipperland.
Brian, the Clippers were 21st in the NBA in defensive rating last season. What is their potential on that end of the floor this year?
Well, I think they jump up to number one, or definitely within the top three. They are going to defend home, and by home I mean Paul George is from the LA area, so is Kawhi Leonard. When you couple that with Beverly, Harkless, JaMychal Green, Montrezl Harrell, Magruder, all guys that are known more for their tenacity on the defensive end, we have what in the making of Grindhouse West. The Memphis Grizzlies are known as the Grindhouse, but I think this is the Grindhouse West with this team. It's not going to be pretty all the time, but they have guys that they can put out there that can really wear you down and grind you down. And then offensively, obviously, having Paul George and Kawhi Leonard as two of the better offensive players in the league, the six-man with Lou Williams coming off the bench that can light you up, anywhere from 30 to 50 points on a given night as well. You have the coach in Doc Rivers. I mean, a very well-rounded team, and possibly already the trophy should be the executive of the year for pulling off the coup of bringing Kawhi and Paul together on this team.
There's no reason to think this shouldn't be a good offensive team, but defensively they have the potential to be elite. What kind of a cushion is that for Doc Rivers, especially early in the season, before Paul George is maybe in the mix or when he's working himself into that rotation and building chemistry?
Well, it's a mentality that he's going to develop with this team before Paul gets here. And no matter how much talent you have, when you can play hard, and these guys that I just named, they play extremely hard, that even if they aren't the most talented team out there, it levels the playing field because of the fact that they play so tenaciously and play with that attitude that they're going to bring. And so that mentality that he's going to develop, I'm sure, from training camp to when the season starts, Paul, when he comes and is able to join the team, it's just going to fit seamlessly.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. The only big picture concern is, do they have another legitimate third option in that starting lineup? Because Lou Williams is going to be that kind of guy. Montrezl Harrell, I think, really going to have a solid season for them as he continues to emerge. But they probably offensively need one more guy that they can consistently rely on to score the basketball, and especially early with Paul not being there. So that's the only real concern. But this team is going to be dynamic because those two guys are going to push each other as well. Like the competition within Paul and Kawhi in terms of, I'm a better defender than you are. And that's healthy for your team because those two guys will take the challenge of guarding the opponent's best player. But they're going to still want to get a little bit better on that end. And I think that's where Doc's creativity offensively, can they come up with a system maybe to help develop somebody? Is it Landry Shamet ready to have a breakout year? Because he can really shoot the basketball. So something like that's got to happen for this team, I believe, to get to that next level. But I think they have the wherewithal to do it.
We'll get into their depth chart a little later on. As I mentioned, the Clippers will have to wait a bit on Paul George. He offered this assessment of his health during the team's media day.
As far as my health, I'm pretty good. I'll be in camp starting this week. Nothing contact, but all the 5-on-0 stuff, all the scripted stuff I'll be a part of. In terms of being, I'm used to being in this rehab stage and knowing what it takes to get my body prepared and get my body up to speed. It's a long process, but, again, I think me going through it and having a drastic injury in my leg, I know what to expect. I know what pressure to put on myself and what pressure not to put on myself as well. That comes with a lot of stress when you're going through rehab. So I'm just in a good place. I know what I need to do. I know what I'm capable of, and ultimately I know when my body's ready.
Well, he makes a good point. He knows rehab. He's been through that before for sure, but he's coming off shoulder surgeries on both sides in the offseason. On the flip side, Kawhi Leonard says he feels significantly better than he did this time last year as he entered what turned out to be a championship season with the Toronto Raptors. How often, I don't know if it's in terms of games or how much it matters, that these two will play together over the course of the season in the load management age?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be critical, big picture for their success. Unlike when Kawhi went to Toronto last year, that was a team that had won 60 games prior to him getting there. So they had an established culture, and they also understood who they were as a basketball team. This group, because of the moves they've had to make, there's a little bit more transition. So I think if you're Doc Rivers, while you're not going to have Paul early on, I think it's going to be vital to their success that he have a significant stretch where those two guys develop chemistry and trust on the floor. Whether or not they love each other off is you got to trust it on the floor, and that's going to take time.
And I think in terms of load management, Doc will manage that by not necessarily having Kawhi miss games, but just maybe dialing back the number of minutes that he plays in the game to preserve him in that way. But one of the sneaky underrated moves that the Clippers made as well, I don't know that we've seen a coach be in a position that if the coach wanted to take load management, he could do that as well. I mean, they have Ty Lue, who they brought on the coaching staff, who was a championship coach, who coached with Doc in Boston before, played for him in Orlando, who understands him. And if Doc, for whatever reason, wanted to take some time off, whether it was in practice or the games, a guy that's more than capable, as well as pushing the right buttons for the players that are on that team.
So given Paul George's late start, how late into the season do you expect to have a better idea of what this group is together? Generally,
when you construct a new roster, I always felt like Christmas was a period where you should start to develop an identity and a personality. With this being the case, though, honestly, it might be All-Star. It could be All-Star before you really get a sense of who they are. And a lot of that's because they won't have a sense, because you just haven't had an opportunity to go through the fires. But that still would give them time, I think, to be able to make a run, because there is still a lot of uncertainty at the top. If you think about all the elite teams in that Western Conference outside of Utah and Denver, all of them have made wholesale moves in terms of personnel. Yeah. So, everybody's going to go through a bit of a transition for this upcoming season.
And I also think that it's going to, with Paul George being out at the beginning of this season, it's going to give Kawhi Leonard a chance to let everybody else in the league know how good he really is. And I think that the other players at his respective position and the other superstars around the league already understand that by what he's done, in his career to this point, specifically last season. But I think that he's going to take that on as a challenge to keep this team afloat until Paul gets there and until they do develop that chemistry. And usually going into the All-Star break and then the games right after the All-Star break is where you really make ground, because some players start to think about the break before it comes. After the break, they're still on the break. But I think the Doc is going to keep them focused, and Kawhi, like I said, is going to use this as motivation to really let everybody know what kind of player he really is.
Of course, it's the second straight year that Kawhi Leonard is learning not a new city to him, but a new team, a new organization. Mm-hmm. He is the first ever to leave a title team after winning Finals MVP. And of course, he's a two-time champ as well. He talked about what makes for a championship team.
Everybody being high character, sacrifice, wanting to win, determination, knowledge. All that together, just being on the floor, going out there as one unit, all trying to accomplish that ultimate goal. I think that's what drives a championship team.
It'll be interesting, not just for the guys on this roster, but the guys in this organization. the Lob City teams were really good, but no one necessarily predicted them to win an NBA championship. This team is in that category. How will they handle it as not just players on the floor and a coaching staff, but as an organization, as a franchise?
I mean, it's a great point because the expectations really have changed, right? Even though that Lob City group was fun to watch and good, no one thought they were better than Golden State. This group has a chance to be in that category, and you could argue that their two best players are better than any of the two that played on that Lob City. And that's with all due respect to Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, who will both be Hall of Famers. Mm-hmm. But, what Kawhi's done, that's generational. I mean, he's got 2 finals MVPs with 2 different teams. He's in his prime. Paul George is proven to be a top probably 10, 12 player in this league over the course of his career. So, I mean, you're talking some serious firepower, and with those expectations comes more pressure, but that's where it's important to have a coaching staff. You talked about Ty Lue, Doc Rivers. That really makes a huge difference when you're trying to keep your team focused, because it's easy to get ahead of yourself when the expectations rise.
Yeah, what'll change at practice, on the plane rides, on the buses now that people are watching this team and thinking of it as a championship contender?
Well, I think that they're going to all embrace it. I think it's going to be fun, the buzz that's going around in the city. But I don't think that it's just starting now. I think that with Doc's arrival in L.A., he started it subtly back then. And a lot of people don't know before Doc got there and the Clippers and the Lakers shared the Staples Center, the Lakers banners still always hung even during the Clippers games.
Right.
And when Doc got there, he had them cover the Laker banners when it was Clipper games. They got their own facility. Now Ballmer's in talks of doing a new stadium there. And so I think that they've broken out of the shadow of the Lakers and the excitement and everything that they have now. This is something that's been building. I think that Doc started when he got there, and now that momentum is pushing in the right direction, and it's going to be huge.
Remember, this is a franchise that has still not even reached the Western Conference Finals, as long as they've been in Southern California. Much more to get to here on the other side. He's put man into 6-man. Lou Williams and the rest of the Clippers coming together behind their 2 superstars.